Centre 97.3, Est-Ouest 91.7. RM1, la radio nationale.
RM1, 9 o'clock. The news in English with Eris Stewart. Good morning, Eris.
Good morning, Sophie.
The headlines.
Audit report exposes governance failures and lack of accountability in public administration. Prime Minister calls for unity and solidarity amid global uncertainty. Paul Béranger to address the press after internal tensions within MMM. Prison inquiry reveals severe staff shortages at Melrose facility. No gas shortage expected in Mauritius despite global price surge. Mauritius highlights women's rights progress at the United Nations. In world news, Middle East conflict escalates into energy-focused confrontation. And in sports news, Europa League round of 16 delivers major upsets and dramatic finishes. The Certificate of Audit and Reports of the Director of Audit 2024-2025 tabled in Parliament this Tuesday is a key document for public finance transparency in Mauritius. A dense and technical report, but beyond the figures, it reveals much about the real estate of public management and the persistent weaknesses at the heart of the state. Lovina Sophie tells us more.
An 800-page report has been tabled in Parliament. In his general observations, the Director of Audit, Damramraj Paligadu, highlights governance failures, a lack of follow-up in the implementation of public policies, and above all, the difficulty of administrations in translating recommendations into concrete action. 3 key examples illustrate these findings. First, in the blue economy sector, presented as a strategic pillar for over a decade, it has failed to deliver on its promises. Its contribution to GDP has remained unchanged since 2013, well below the targets set. Mauritius also continues to rely on imports for 2/3 of its fish consumption. Next, the management of public aid in artisanal fishing. The bad weather allowance amounted to 384 million rupees paid to 2,524 beneficiaries. However, the report notes that these payments are not always based on actual fishing activity, with some beneficiaries identified as having overjobs. Finally, investments in semi-industrial fishing, despite significant public funding up to 52 million rupees in subsidies, results have fallen short. Catches remain well below quotas, sometimes reaching only 21% of expected capacity. In light of his findings, the Director of Audit does not simply point out the shortcomings, he also makes recommendations including strengthening governance mechanisms and fostering a true culture of accountability within public institutions.
The Prime Minister, Dr. Navin Ramgoolam, is calling for stronger social cohesion and national solidarity in an uncertain international context. During celebrations of Gudi Padwa, he highlighted Mauritius's rich multicultural identity, stressing that this diversity inherited from our ancestors is one of the country's greatest strengths. He also emphasized the need to preserve national unity and avoid division. Taking the opportunity to comment on the political situation, the Prime Minister stated that his government is relying on a strong team that must persevere, describing Rajesh Bhagwan and Ajay Ganesh as real bulldozers. He was speaking at the celebrations in Mocha. Take a listen to this report.
Ugadi was celebrated at national level at the Mahatma Gandhi Institute in Mocha. The guest of honor for the Telugu New Year, the Prime Minister Dr. Navin Ramgoolam. The Prime Minister Dr. Navin Ramgoolam also addressed the conflict in the Middle East and its impact on the Mauritian economy. The upcoming budget, he said, will not be an easy one.
Il arrive 100 mètres de l'or là. Prix gaz pour monter la attaque ça va place côté la gaz pour plus monter encore. Marchandises pour monter. Et il a dit qu'on peut quoi budget pour facile. Il pas facile. Le point de budget dit encore bien ça gagne. Mais nous qui nous l'intérêt. Nous l'intérêt c'est faire si que nous fait nous baisse pour nos pays. Que nous réussit faire face avec l'adversité qui peut venir devant.
Dr. Navin Ramgoolam also paid tribute to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi for India's continued support. The Memorandum of Understanding for a government-to-government agreement to ensure Mauritius' supply of petroleum products is already ready.
Le MOU fin déjà paré, nous allons signer là pour nous gagner sous pétrole, nous pas dépendre le Moyen-Orient, nous gagnons le pétrole de l'Inde, PNA, argent entre nous, côté. Pena pour payer, non, parce que pena coûte, government to government, les politiciens nous la montage. Mais avant la guerre, on dit ça. Et pourquoi moi, je dis un grand merci au gouvernement indien et que le Premier ministre Narendra Modi, pour que tout de suite, comme on dit, il commence à faire des masses.
The Prime Minister also officially launched the new website of the Mauritius Telugu Mahasabha.
And speaking of politics, and the MMM Paul Béranger will meet the press this morning at 11 a.m. at his office in Port Louis. This comes after several days of internal tensions within the MMM and a central committee meeting on Wednesday, during which no clear decision was announced. According to our information, his statement is expected to address his position as Deputy Prime Minister. Only 2 or 3 officers to supervise 30 detainees. The Commission of Inquiry into the death of Andy Selmore has exposed chronic insecurity at Melrose Prison. Testifying before the Commission, prison officers denounced a severe lack of staff which weakens the entire prison system. Hansen Mongra, Secretary of the Prison Officers. It should be noted that hearings in the Andy Selmore inquiry continue this morning. Guards and experts warn that without increased staffing and better training, prison security remains compromised. Andy Selmore's death stands as an example, with detainees claiming that no officer was present during his assault. In a context of rising tensions in the Middle East and soaring hydrocarbon prices, Mauritius is reassuring the public that no gas shortage is expected. The country currently has around 50 days of stock following the arrival of 5,947 tonnes on Wednesday. Another shipment of 3,000 tonnes is expected on March 31, ensuring a comfortable buffer. The situation is partly due to the diversification of suppliers, including Australia, Argentina and the United States, rather than relying solely on the Middle East. This is despite a global price increase of around 50%. Gas also remains subsidized in Mauritius. The Minister, Michael Sikuen, has warned, however, against the real risk of panic buying, recalling scenes seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. And in other news, at the United Nations, women's voices resonated strongly this week. Between legal progress and ongoing challenges, Mauritius' permanent representative to the UN, Milan Mitauban, highlighted government efforts to strengthen protection for women victims of domestic violence. He also spoke about female representation in politics, a key factor in improving access to justice for women and girls, which is also the theme of the 70th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. We listen to more in this report.
Their voices rise, sometimes fragile, yet never silenced. Across the world, women move forward, struggle, hope for a fundamental right to live free and equal. In New York, at the heart of the United Nations, the realities take shape. Their struggles become commitments. The Commission on the Status of Women, where equality is shaped year after year. Mauritius made its voice heard on March 17th. Its permanent representative to the United Nations, Milan Mitauban, highlighted ambitious policies paving the way for greater female representation at the highest levels of public administration, the judiciary and key national institutions, including the Bank of Mauritius.
Mauritius has adopted a gender-responsive budgeting, and gender priorities are systematically embedded into all policies, programs and action. And implementation is overseen as the highest level of government, reflecting our political commitment to real and lasting change. Significant policies reinforcing legal and constitutional safeguards have resulted in higher women participation in leadership and decision-making.
Yet behind these laws and their implementation, the gap in protecting victims of domestic violence remains real, a gap the government aims to reduce, notably through the Domestic Abuse Bill.
The Protection from Domestic Violence Act has ensured that women seeking justice are not held back by financial or procedural barriers. Free legal advice are provided to victims. The Act also provides comprehensive, protective and meaningful remedies. Government is currently working on a new Domestic Abuse Bill to strengthen the legal framework for preventing domestic violence and enhancing protection.
More than 100 states, one shared decision to improve access to justice for women and girls, with 37 votes in favor, 1 against and 6 abstentions. The conclusions were adopted and the step towards more equitable justice.
And it's 9:09. We're listening to RM1, where we move to international news. The conflict in the Middle East is entering a new phase, gradually turning into a war over hydrocarbons, with energy infrastructure directly targeted. Several sites were hit yesterday amid rising tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Tehran is believed to have carried out strikes on Saudi installations, while Riyadh has threatened retaliation. The immediate consequence, a surge in oil prices, with an increase of around 35% in just 24 hours on international markets. At the same time, former US President Donald Trump called on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to avoid targeting oil infrastructure, warning that the situation could spiral out of control, a development that raises fears of a major escalation in the region. And finally, in sports football in Europe, the Europa League round of 16 has delivered its verdict, starting with Bologna's impressive feat, eliminating AS Roma. The Italians won 4-3 for an aggregate score of 5-4. Meanwhile, Aston Villa continued their strong run. The English side beat Lille 2-0 in the return leg. Another dominant performance came from Real Betis. After losing the first leg, the Spaniards overturned with a clear 4-0 win. FC Porto also secured a place in the quarterfinals after defeating Stuttgart 2-0. Huge suspense between Midtjylland and Nottingham Forest. The English side qualified after a controlled penalty shootout, winning 3-0. Freiburg beat Genk 5-1 and Celta Vigo defeated Lyon 2-0. The quarterfinals promised to be explosive, with a clash between Aston Villa and Bologna, as well as Porto facing Nottingham Forest.